I'm at the point where if a member of Congress acts like an adult, I'm in shock. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. Right now, the Democrats are leading the way in childish behavior, and they do a fair job of it even when they're in power. But we've got some members of the GOP that when they get in front of a camera, they look like or they act like they need a babysitter. Well, I just saw a Senate hearing, and I don't know a lot about Senator Andy Kim. He is from New Jersey. I am well aware that he is a liberal. I am well aware that he is a progressive liberal. I am well aware that this guy is a normal Democrat in his voting standards and he is Obama connected. So before you come at me because I am pointing him out, in this instance, in this instance, a man who actually most of the time is rarely highlighted for anything is acting like an adult. It is the Senate confirmation hearing for Neil Jacobs to have an important role at NOAA. So here's a man uh, who is a scientist, and Neil Jacobs is a scientist. He's got a degree in mathematics and physics, earned two Bachelor of Science degrees in mathematics and physics from the University of South Carolina in 1997. He followed by a Master of Science and PhD in atmospheric science from North Carolina State University. The only blemish on his record that I can find isn't even actually a blemish. It's a liberal media acting stupid scandal. Literally, that's all it is. It's called Sharpiegate. It's basically liberal media got stupid and created a scandal out of nothing. Literally nothing. So, a man vastly qualified to be head of NOAA or anything for that matter is talking with Andy Kim in the Senate confirmation hearing. You've got to hear it. It is intelligent. I was so shocked. I was like, I have to highlight this. Also, if you don't mind, hit like, subscribe for to hear when adults actually act like adults. So here we go.
Howdy, y'all. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. What we have here is a channel to communicate. I want you folks to be thinking by the time you leave my videos. Why? Because I'm tired of people talking via what other people tell them to think. So, watch my video and enjoy the chance to think for yourself.
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, I just want to start by just expressing my deep sadness for the tragedy in Texas. Just really horrific. And as I'm a parent of a 7-year-old and 9-year-old little kids that are going to camp this summer, I mean, I know so many parents and families are just so heartbroken and feel shattered by what has happened. And I express the urgency of trying to figure out not only how we can better predict and have an early warning system, but how to get that information out to people as quickly as possible. In my home state, in New Jersey, we suffered from Superstorm Sandy, from Hurricane Ida, other things like that. Dr. Jacobs, you and I talked about this briefly, but just building on what you talked to the chairman and others about these early warning systems, there's been talk about even using even just using sirens similar to what we've done for tornadoes in this country. As far as I know, do you know of any usage of sirens when it comes to flooding in the United States at this point?
Not to my knowledge, but I do know that some systems that have been deployed in Spain and France, they essentially network a flow meter to a siren, and if the flow rate exceeds a certain amount, it triggers a siren. Depending on where the upstream rain falls and the rain rate, it doesn't give you a whole lot of lead time, but it's certainly better than nothing.
Even just a few seconds or a few minutes, you can make a huge difference. Is that something you would work with us here in Congress to think through and figure out how best to be able to deploy some of this?
Absolutely.
Another part of this in terms of being able to understand where flooding might happen and what communities are most vulnerable is about hydrological modeling. And I worry about this because in New Jersey, we've had concerns about whether or not we are up to date with the latest modeling. A lot of the models that we've seen sometimes use outdated data from decades ago. There's been talk about trying to invest in LiDAR technology, and I would like to get your thoughts on that, as well as whether or not that's something for the federal government to be able to take on.
I agree. I believe this is a federal mission. A lot of it right now, the capability state by state. So some states have more sophisticated data and flood inundation mapping than others. Hydrological modeling is extremely challenging and technical because you're essentially using one model to initialize another. So the hydrological model could be perfect in its equations, and if the atmospheric model puts the rainstorm in the wrong place, then the secondary model's not going to be right. So that is critical, but the hydrological models, to be successful, need the most updated digital elevation, and the only way I know to really get that data as accurate as possible is through LiDAR. So I think having access to LiDAR data to optimize that and having a nationwide flood inundation mapping capability would be very, very helpful.
It doesn't seem to make sense to me that we would have each state do their own, right? I mean, it could create so much asymmetry in the data, but having like a baseline federal hydrological data that we can draw from, does that make sense to you? Am I thinking about it right?
It does make sense, and it's if the capability stops at the state border, but the roads don't, and you need to deploy assets on the other side of the state border, you need to actually have that information.
Especially when it comes to hurricanes often affecting multiple states simultaneously. And am I correct that we don't necessarily have modeling that combines both the forecasting for hurricanes as well with the hydrological data? We don't have modeling that combines the two, which seems like that would be incredibly important. Is that correct?
It is. So I'll give you a great example of Hurricane Florence that made landfall in the Carolinas a few years ago. It put down almost 36 inches of rain, but it also was in one place for almost 3 days. And so you have that storm surge, and the water from the rain can't drain east because the winds are pushing it west. And those two models, the storm surge model and the hydrological models from the rainfall, need to be coupled.
Yeah. I want to switch gears here. I'd like to just read a sentence here and get your thoughts on it. It's a quote. Quote, it's extremely likely that human activities, especially emissions of greenhouse gases, are the dominant cause of the observed warming since the mid-20th century. For the warming over the last century, there is no convincing alternative explanation supported by the extent of the observational evidence. I just wanted to get your thoughts if you agree with that statement or not.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of natural signals that are mixed in there too, and so in the absence of any natural signals that might dominate that, yes, there's human influences certainly there.
So you see human influence being part of the concern when it comes to climate change, when it comes to extreme weather?
Yes, there's influence.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to just be able to think that through, because as we're trying to assess predictions and trying to do forecasts, it's important to understand causality. And so we're trying to understand what is causing the warming of ocean temperatures that affect hurricane strength and other aspects of that. So I just want to continue to make sure that we're pushing this forward. We're letting science drive our decision-making in so many ways. So I hope that that is something you can commit to if you're confirmed. Thank you, and I'll yield back.
Did you see what I mean? Quite literally, Andy Kim and Neil Jacobs were having a valid discussion that had nothing to do with politics. It had everything to do with the matter at hand. Wow. I saw this and I went, holy cow. They're not screaming, they're not yelling, they're acting like adults. And yes, it's for a boring job, but a very important one. And as you heard from this discussion, a very, very important one. I am glad that Andy Kim was acting like an adult. I would ask that the rest of his colleagues do the same thing. Notice I said colleagues. I didn't say rest of his the Democrat friends or anything like that. I am tired of hearing GOP do it just as much as I'm tired of hearing liberals do it. I mean, seriously, why is Hank Johnson still in office? Folks, y'all in Georgia need to get him out of office. Seriously. I don't care if you put another Democrat in there, put an adult in there. I am glad that this happened. I really am. I am over this being a thing where screaming, yelling, acting like a fool has become normal in Congress. Okay, it's long history. I read history. I'm well aware that Congress acts like fools all the time and have been for since the begin. Well, not so much in the beginning, but after a while they started acting a fool, and it didn't take long after the beginning for them to. So, yeah, we need to normalize acting like an adult again. That's my thought process. Also, I'm putting this at the end. If you guys listened all the way through, if you like hearing these kind of viewpoints, these kinds of stories, I am trying to raise $3,000 so I can get better equipment. Basically, that's it. My biggest thing is I need better equipment, a few other things, and I've got a budget, $3,000. I don't need somebody to pay it all at once. I've got a Patreon. If you're listening to me on Rumble, if you're on YouTube, you can get a membership, the join thing. It would be helpful. It really would, if y'all don't mind. This has been Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Y'all have a good day now. Bye. So, folks, that's the story that I wanted to bring you on this video. And I just wanted to say thank you again for coming by. Well, hit like, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff if you don't mind. Help me out. So, y'all have a good day now. Bye.